I've just been reading this book, written by an eminent psychiatrist on the basic reasons for murder. He breaks it down into 3 categories: greed, passion, and revenge. His summation is that any murder is the work of a diseased mind, because if the final payment were to be looked at logically, the murder would not be committed. However, as we know by reading our newspapers, murders are constantly being committed, and the police are constantly searching for the guilty parties. They, too, break crime down into 3 categories: how, why, and who. Washington, D.C. has a metropolitan police force with all the latest scientific equipment to find out how the crime was committed, criminologists to find out why, but the job of finding out who committed the crime is the responsibility of such men as Detective Sergeant Lloyd B. Furr, tonight's man behind the badge. The brutality of this double murder was shocking enough to arouse the entire city. Washington, D.C. was inflamed, and when the murderer wasn't apprehended within the hour, the pressure began to increase. Pressure that started with the chief, worked its way down to the captain in charge of homicide, and then straight to Detective Furr.
Not very pretty, is it?
First thing I saw when I got off the train.
Merrick,
I'll call you back.
Lloyd, I'm taking you off for forgery and putting you on this.
Yes, sir.
This is your first homicide case, so you and Merrick will work together.
How much do we know?
All we know is what's in the paper, so keep in touch with me.
You get a chance to read this?
Yeah, I talked to Lieutenant Myers. He couldn't add anything.
Let's go over and take a look.
Right.
Papers are laying it on pretty heavy.
Now, they won't be happy till we send someone to the chair.
Neither will we.
According to the papers, the crime was committed at 2 a.m. They were right. The 2 watchmen guarding a department store were both knifed to death. The papers said the police had no suspects or clue to the identity of the assassin. They were right again. And they also said that it looked as though someone was going to get away with murder. This time, they were wrong.
Miss Mallory?
Yes?
I'm Sergeant Furr.
Am I a suspect, Sergeant?
No, ma'am. However, you are in charge of the tea room. And this is where the man or men gained admittance to the building.
Well, I've been sitting here for an hour, and no one has even talked to me. Maybe I should call my lawyer.
That won't be necessary. This is my partner, Sergeant Merrick.
How do you do? Is that what
They found it next to the body. Manager thinks it belongs to the kitchen, but there are no prints on it.
Take this back to lab men.
Mrs. Ogden used that knife. She works behind the buffet table.
When was the last time you saw her use it?
Last night before she went home. She put it away.
We checked her time card. Checked out at 6:10. Restaurant closes at 5.
That's right.
Will you show me where she kept it?
Of course. Here on the top shelf.
Lieutenant Myers' crew did a complete check on all the doors and windows. They were all locked, except this one.
The lock is broken. I spoke to the maintenance half a dozen times, but they were always too busy.
How long's it been broken?
About 6 months.
Well, thank you. I think that'll be all for now.
May I go home now? They wouldn't even let us serve lunch today.
Just leave a number where you can be reached, in case we want to talk to you again.
I'll be home. You see, I'm so upset. When I'm tense, I read to relax.
Yes, ma'am.
I read murder mysteries. This is just like the first chapter.
We'll call you.
Most people say they can figure out the ending, but I can't. Never. I'm always surprised in the last chapter. Will I be able to find out how it comes out?
We can tell you that now, ma'am.
You can?
Yes. There's myself, Detective Merrick, and about 500 other men. We're looking for whomever did this. It might take us a long time, but in the last chapter, we'll get him.
Deduction has its place in a modern police force. The position of the knife indicated that a man standing on his tiptoes would have to be at least 6 feet to reach it. The fact that the only unlocked window in the department store was used indicated that it must have been someone familiar with the store. The 6-foot suspect would have to be, or have been, an employee within the past 6 months. The total employment during that period was 1,123. Detectives Spur and Merrick both worked until 3 a.m. on Saturday and then caught 4 hours sleep in the bed department. They returned to the files and continued working all through Sunday.
How many more do you think?
About 50.
How many we got?
8 possibilities.
I talked to the manager. He said his last estimate was the guy got away with about $300.
Why? Supposing it isn't an inside job. Supposing it was a customer. Stroke of luck, he found that open window and the knife.
Well, then it'll just be a long book. There'll still have to be a last chapter.
The final list of suspects totaled 9. All names were sent through R&I and also to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Of the 9, 2 had police records. The murders were 48 hours old, and the newspapers had taken their usual line. The police were working on a lead. The police promised an early arrest. It all sounded quite simple, but it wasn't. The first man on the list was Philip A. Tully. He said that on the night of the murder, he was playing bridge with some friends in Alexandria, Virginia. His alibi checked out. Second man on the list was Paul Stock, employee in the stockroom. His alibi checked out. The third man on the list was Angelo Briscoe. He said he went to a movie. He was told to get dressed and come down to headquarters. He spent a very uncomfortable 2 hours while his story was checked out. The fourth man had been in a veterans hospital at the time of the murders. The fifth had been unable to locate. The sixth was out of town. The seventh had died a week before the crime was committed. The eighth had been at a party. And the ninth, Vincent Wells, was waiting in the interrogation room. He had answered some questions, some he couldn't.
Well, we're still checking your alibi.
It should be easy. I was babysitting for my brother-in-law like I told you.
There's some things you haven't told me, Vincent.
I told you, this girl came over about 9:30. We played records until midnight.
That's your story.
She went home before my brother-in-law got back.
And now she's in New York and you don't know where.
I didn't kill those guys. I wasn't even near the store.
Do you know Jay Patterson?
I think maybe I know him.
We know you were with him the afternoon of the murder.
How'd you know?
Same way we're going to find out if you killed those 2 men.
Heck, I didn't do it, Sergeant. Honest. Check my parole office. I haven't slipped once.
You weren't supposed to associate with known or suspected criminals, yet you're with Jay Patterson.
I just bumped into him. We had some coffee.
Where?
In the tea shop. I mean, look, I don't know what I'm saying.
Did you kill him, Vincent?
No! No. Honest.
That's all I want you to be, is honest.
I know Jay.
And you were with him on Friday.
Yeah.
What'd you talk about?
Baseball, the new car. You got a cigarette? You're a pretty nice guy for a cop.
That's what my wife says when she wants a favor.
Look, do you have to say where you find out things? I mean, I'm going straight. I don't like to squeal on a guy.
You'll be protected.
Jay and I talked about knocking over that department store. I said no. I had my fill of stuff.
But you talked about knocking it over.
Sure, but... Look, I left Jay at 6 o'clock. My sister feeds me when I sit with the kid. I didn't see him again. That's all I know, honest. He didn't say anything. He just said to forget it.
Looks like he didn't.
See you a minute, Lloyd.
Sure. How's his alibi?
We located the girl in New York. She admitted being with him.
Looks like Jay Patterson's our boy. He told me they were both in the store that day, talked about the job.
I'll go back and see if we got a lead on Patterson.
Well, your alibi checks out.
You had me worried. I mean, being I got a record and everything, I figured it'd be easy to pin this on me.
It would have been if you did it. You have no idea where we can find Jay Patterson.
Sergeant, I don't even want to hear his name. He's the wrong guy.
We think he's the right guy.
An all-points bulletin was sent out to find Jay Patterson. Age 27, height 6'1", wanted for interrogation on a murder charge. 3 weeks passed, and not one lead came through. Washington was a big city. There were plenty of places to hide, and Jay Patterson seemed to have found a good place.
Lineup this morning looked like a bunch of centers and a basketball team.
Oh, he might have skipped to Baltimore and hopped a banana boat. Guy could be buried in South America by this time.
We checked every ship loaded or unloaded in the past 3 weeks. Nobody reported to fit the description.
Well, it's a cinch. He was never a professional sailor. Was rope they tied up that first guard with? Seaman would be that sloppy.
I think he's still around.
This fit your man?
Yeah, it's Patterson's description, all right.
I thought so.
Who sent this in?
Druggist over on Franklin.
Maybe we're finally going to get a break.
I doubt it.
Why?
Man answering that description just used his knife again.
The druggist, who luckily had only been wounded superficially, had agreed to come to headquarters and try to identify a picture of his assailant. He was handed 5 photos, and without hesitation picked out a rogues gallery picture of Jay Patterson. He was thanked for his help and asked to give a statement to the secretary on his way out. Detective Lloyd Furr now was assured that the man he was looking for was still within the city limits.
Still gives him plenty of places to hole up, Lloyd.
Yeah, if he's pulled another job, he's run out of money. He only got $35 from the druggist. How long do you think that'll last him?
Oh, if he's careful, about 10 days.
He doesn't strike me as being the careful type.
Well, I'll get him to run off a batch of his description and circulate him around town.
Phil, just how much do we know about him?
Enough to send him to the chair?
Yeah, I know that, but not enough to find him. I'd like to get a line on his habits, his likes and dislikes, how he kills time. If I can learn enough, maybe he'll show us where to look for him.
It's worth a try.
He's killed 2 men, almost 3. He's got nothing to lose by going right on killing.
And we better find him before he runs out of money.
Start with his mother.
Well, do you think she'll cooperate? How'll she feel about talking?
How many kids you got, Phil?
3.
Tonight when you get home, ask your wife how she'd feel.
He had curls until he was 5. He won a medal in the 6th grade. I lost it. It was solid gold.
It's very difficult for me, Mrs. Patterson.
I don't blame you. Who do I blame, Sergeant?
It's hard to tell.
Me? Was it my fault?
No, ma'am.
He's been in trouble so many times, and I forgave him. I always forgave him. Was that wrong?
Maybe it was discipline and not forgiveness that he needed.
The Bible says to forgive.
It also says that a man must pay for his sins. The man who commits them. Not his brother, nor his mother.
You sure it couldn't be someone else and not my Jay?
He was identified by a man he robbed.
It's got to be my fault.
Mrs. Patterson, how well do you know your son?
I'm his mother.
Well, I want to find him. It's our belief that he was responsible for the deaths of 2 men. But you're his mother, and I don't expect you to answer any of my questions unless you want to.
If he's killed too, and if he'll kill again, how could I face their mothers?
Did he have any close friends?
I don't know.
How do you spend his leisure time?
I don't know.
Did he have a girl?
I don't know.
I see.
No, for the first time I see. My son was a stranger.
J. Patterson. J. Patterson. Oh, yes, I remember him now.
Well, I talked to his mother, a garage mechanic he worked with, and the owner of a pool room where he used to hang out. They can't find out much about him.
Well, he was a very moody boy, that I remember. He used to sit and look out the window all through class.
Well, I'd like to know everything you can remember about him.
He was an average student. He had a good mind. He was lazy. And he never seemed to take an active interest in anything. Now, mind you now, it's a good 10 years since he was in my class.
Was he much of a reader?
No.
Then he wouldn't spend much time in libraries, would he?
Or museums. No, Jay lived a life of his own. He was a quiet boy.
Or was he active in sports?
Well, I don't remember. I'd suggest you talk to Coach Williams. I wish I could be more helpful in this, but I'm afraid I can't. Jay was a very quiet boy, as I've said. He lived apart from the rest of his classmates.
Well, I appreciate the time you've taken, Mr. Glenwood.
Yes. Tell me, is this for a school yearbook or a newspaper?
No, sir.
Well, I've had some brilliant students in my classes. Some of them become doctors, lawyers, architects. And tell me, why are you interested in J. Patterson, Mr. Fur? What could Jay have possibly done to interest anyone?
Killed 2 people.
Detective Lloyd Furr kept piecing together all the bits of information he was gathering. The man he was looking for was J. Patterson. He was moody, a dreamer, unruly, but no one seemed to care why. Everybody had a different interpretation of him. Everyone thought they knew all about him, but nobody knew enough to tell Detective Furr where to find him. Then the circulars that had been sent out began to pay off.
Mr. Brand?
Yes?
I'm Detective Furr. My partner, Detective Merrick.
Oh, about that man that I recognized, right?
That's right.
Do you mind if I arrange these? Woman comes in, spends 20 minutes, doesn't buy a thing.
You think you could pick him out of these photos?
If his picture's there.
This one. That's Patterson, all right.
I read those circulars the police circulate. Probably the only one in the block who does. I also watch those television programs, the ones with the clues. Never see any of those men, though.
How'd you happen to recognize our man?
He wandered into the shop. Well, I run a very exclusive women's shop here. And this man, well, he just didn't seem to be my type of clientele.
Well, how was he dressed?
A tan leather jacket, no necktie, and a crew haircut.
Did he act suspicious?
Just being in here made him suspicious.
We appreciate your help, Mr. Brand.
Always glad to assist.
If you happen to see him again, please give us a call.
Fur. Fur? Why, one of my favorite customers is named Mrs. Fur. Is she your wife?
How much does this pair cost?
Oh, that's an original. $60 a pair.
Not my wife.
No, I haven't seen Jay in over a year. He in trouble?
Well, we'd like to have a talk with him.
Oh, he'll have a tough time. He can sit all night and not say a word.
Do you know him very well?
Well enough.
Do you take you dancing?
Dancing? After 5 shows a day? No. Oh, we only went out a few times. Then to the movies.
You haven't seen him in over a year.
We had an argument on the phone. Haven't seen him since.
What was it about?
Oh, I guess it was silly at that. But you see, after 5 shows a day, I'm beat. Jay's the type of guy that, he can't sleep and he won't let anyone else sleep. So he called me every night about 4 o'clock in the morning. Imagine, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Every night?
Oh, sure, for a solid month. He was a great one for talking on the phone.
Why 4 o'clock?
Oh, like I told you, can't sleep. Won't let anyone else sleep, so goes to an all-night movie. And they shut up at 12 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Calls me. Any wonder I blew on top? Oh, there's Sammy saying my date's here.
What did he talk about?
No, himself.
What about himself?
Usual junk. About what a big man he's gonna be. Funny, isn't it?
What?
When a man stops talking, gets into trouble.
Detective Furr immediately called the captain of the homicide division. He explained what he'd learned, and the captain arranged to have a team of men watch every all-night theater. Sergeant Furr and his partner, meanwhile, began to question the personnel of the various theaters. The first 3 theaters they visited, no one could identify the picture of Jay Patterson. No usher, ticket taker, or manager could place him. At the 5th theater, the manager remembered seeing Jay Patterson twice during the past 10 days. No, he didn't know the police were looking for him, but yes, he would certainly get in touch with them. 4 times during the next week, Detective Furr almost had Patterson within his grasp. But by the time he got the information, it was too late. He'd been on the case a long time, but he wasn't showing enough results. Not enough to satisfy his superiors, the newspapers, nor himself. He was sitting at his desk, getting ready to start another round of theaters, when he had a visitor.
Detective Furr? Yes? Can I sit down? Go right ahead, Jay. I asked 3 cops where to find your office. None of them recognized me. They recognized you, Jay. You had all the bus depots, airports, railroads covered. I couldn't get out of town. We were having a little trouble trying to find you. I spent most of my time at the movies. We'd have found you. I know. Why are you giving yourself up? I got a police record. I spent a lot of time talking to cops. I know. Found out you talked to my mother. Spent a long time with her. That's right. I saw her about an hour ago. She told me about you. She said you talked quiet. You treated her like a human being. I felt sorry for her, Jay. But you haven't answered my question. Why are you giving yourself up? And why'd you ask for me? My father ran out on her. I broke her heart. I wanted to meet the only man in the world who was ever nice to my mother.
Jay Patterson was tried, convicted, and sentenced to the electric chair. Punishment was carried out in July of 1952. Detective Lloyd Furr was congratulated and thanked not only by the police force, but by the people of Washington, D.C. Remember, a police force is a team, and that team is on your side. They work for you. So if they ask for your help, offer it. Because if you need help, they'll risk anything to give it. And now this is Charles Bigfoot inviting you to be with us next week. And once again, you will see another authentic story of one whose duty it is to serve. A public servant dedicated to you, and whom you will meet as the man behind the badge.